Almost 2 years ago now, way back when I first redeveloped this channel and hadn't yet gone down the enormous rabbit hole that is Super Monkey Ball ROM hacking, I made a double review of the original Super Monkey Ball 1 and 2. I'm not very fond of that review in hindsight for many reasons and plan to remake it at some point, but one important bit of info from that video was my early exposure to the franchise was only with Monkey Ball 2. Possibly my very first vivid memory ever was getting to the extra stages of beginner on my first playthrough at my aunt's house. I couldn't have been older than 5 at the time, and soon after found myself enamored with the game once I realized we had it at home. By contrast, I wouldn't play Monkey Ball 1 for more than about 10 minutes at a time until I was about 15 years old with access to Nintendo. Thanks to that difference in background, the differences between the two always felt rather stark to me. That's not to say that I didn't enjoy Monkey Ball 1, I enjoyed what I was playing well enough, but I always considered Monkey Ball 2 to be the better game for its greater ambition and lower barrier to entry for most people. Plus a greater sense of nostalgia for myself, of course. It wasn't until I finally gained a good enough understanding of the game's engine to complete Monkey Ball 1 without tool-assisted means that my position changed. Beating the original game's expert mode, and furthermore completing all of Master within the normally allotted lives, allowed me to see the true value of that quarter-munching, brutal yet satisfying arcadey feeling that Monkey Ball 1 had. Soon after, I found myself completing up to Expert on 1-3 Life Continue in SMB2 as well. I was surprised to find, however, that I didn't really enjoy SMB2's Expert mode nearly as much. At first that really confused me, but there happened to be one ROM hack that gave me both a greater appreciation and understanding for both SMB2 as a whole, as well as why I found myself enjoying runs of SMB1 more. That ROM hack is SMB2 and SMB1 style, the first complete pack we'll be looking at. Here we are, ladies and Mentalgen, the complete packs. These Elite 12 ROM hacks have achieved the coveted position of transcending a simple collection of level replacements to becoming nearly completely unique game experiences simply utilizing the SMB2 game engine. Our first on this list, as well as the only one technically operating on stage concepts not strictly original to it, is SMB2 in SMB1 style. Now what do I mean by that? Well, as the name suggests, this one attempts to take most of the level concepts from SMB2 and completely redevelop them within SMB1's mechanics and art direction. Every stage has been retextured and reanimated masterfully within the world themes of SMB1, often being able to trounce the original in terms of sheer graphical fidelity. Seriously, wow, these animations look better than anything the official remaster added. It's nuts. There's so many minute details here that I just can't get enough of, like using the hitter goal in a beautifully reskinned dominoes, or how about folders and curvy options using Monkey Ball's amazing reflections. Synchronized being placed on an ice rink is also just endlessly clever to me. One of the best things about most of these complete packs is their relatively high production value compared to smaller projects, and this one is a fair contender for the best looking ROM hack to use any pre-existing Monkey Ball assets. I could probably gush about the impressive number of recontextualizations here for a tedious amount, but even doing that would be a disservice to the other elements of this pack. There's only a small handful of aesthetic blemishes to really speak of. A handful of the areas in the water background seem to behave a little off regarding the shimmer effect on the stage floor, and a couple of sky-high levels get awfully close to parts of the background that originally had collision in SMB1, but don't here. There's also one instance of what I'll call basketball floor in this stage for seemingly no reason. Honestly, it makes me wish more stages had it rather than it just being the one. Most notably though, the bonus stage lighting seems messed up in some way. Maybe reflections on the flat parts and translucence on the curves would have looked better? I'm not sure. Either way, that definitely could use some tweaking. Also, I really like the idea of making Coaster Ravine like the ones in the background, but I wish it could start with the blue gradient like those do to better drive that concept. Also, the wooden texture for the outside is also kind of an odd choice. Using path checkers along the top probably would have been better. Switches and portals have also been removed entirely and replaced with remarkably solid execution of timers and more conventional automation. I was surprised by both the ingenuity and ability required to work around stages originally designed not just to use switches, but show them off. Sometimes this is done rather easily, like in Mad Shuffle, but other times you see stages like Catapult, completely redefining the way you play a stage like this to great effect. That isn't to say every recontextualization is positive, though. Remember how in the original Monkey Ball the extra stages were reskinned for every difficulty? it was a fairly underwhelming method of handling them, and made the extra stages feel less valuable as a result. For the sake of authenticity though, this flawed at best design choice was preserved for 2-in-1. There's also some stages, notably Bead Screen and the Seesaw levels, that feel comparatively neutered compared to their SMB2 counterparts, and not in a particularly charming way like some of the others. Mad Rings was also one of the only stages in the pack that I consider an outright downgrade from its previous rendition. Those platform lips have killed far too many of my runs in Advanced over what probably seemed like an innocuous design decision. But for every dubious alteration or attempt to stay faithful to the original to a fault, another 10 or so stages are handled excellently, and ported to SMB1's overall format with an impressive finesse. There are some oddities that I'm surprised weren't altered though, even if they weren't intrinsic to the concept of this ROM hack. For instance, some stages can still be beaten just by holding forward, which is generally considered to be a result of Monkey Ball 2's rushed development, rather than being an intentional design choice. Also, I'm a little disappointed that we didn't get air hockey as a bonus stage. Puzzle being rebuilt as one of the best bonus stages around does make up for that a bit, I suppose, but it still would have been nice. Easily the change you'll feel the most as a Monkey Ball vet will come in the form of a completely changed level order. Choose whatever mode you want, they're all different. In Beginner, the shift in warp goal placement via the swapping of floaters and switches/tilt bridges, with the addition of a cleverly hidden warp on the former, allows for a beginner to really drive home the value and expedience of warp goals in a new player's mind better than vanilla SMB2 ever did. I'd go as far as to say that it does a better job than 1, perhaps being a debatably superior entry point for those just picking up the series than every official title. Needless to say, that's pretty damn high marks right off the bat, minus the mere 3 extra stages you get for beating it continuous. Advance offers its fair share of improvements too. The warp goal on Coaster is brilliant, even if the sheer height of the stage does show off some limitations of the level theme. And of course, Beta Arthropod is best Arthropod. 10 out of 10. 5 stars. Zag it! Clockface is a little tough for a stage this early, but those once again stellar visuals help me give it a small pass. Expert, largely due to the sheer quantity of levels involved, shows off the most when it comes to the changed level order. Catwalks is a great starting point, but man, Mad Shuffle is way harder in this version if you're going for warps. It's once you get to Ice that the differences begin to show a little more clearly. The order becomes pretty all over the place compared to the original, and yet simultaneously manages to offer a solid difficulty curve. There's a lot of Master Extra here notably, which only goes to show how unstable the level curve was in late game SMB2, that they fit so well here. Expert Extra removes some notable annoyances like Train Worm and minimizes the pain of air hockey by turning it into a hold-up. I would have preferred the latter be made into a bonus stage as I already mentioned, but this is still a more than acceptable change. Ending on Created By is similarly effective and works as a nice send-off. Also, using conveyors as a workaround for giving Master just 10 stages was pretty clever. I will say though, Master here is definitely the highlight for me. Jump Machine is basically a perfect encapsulation of what can make a project like this so great. It looks great, it plays just as solidly as it used to, and now enforces a new challenge using what was already there to grant it a new placement in the level curve. Cylinders on Crag is a little much to follow that up, but I know exactly why the spike was done. I think we all do. From there we get a stellar retexture of Passage, an improved Intermittent, and an effective use of Invisible for the finale. Also, finally getting to see these stages in a more befitting background is really nice. That's all I have to say about Master though. Yep, absolutely nothing else to see here whatsoever. And by extension, that's pretty much it in terms of the modes in this pack. While Story Mode hasn't been strictly blocked off in the most current release, it's obviously unfinished and by proxy dysfunctional. The only other thing I feel the need to mention is warps due to some oddities with them. See, in SMB1, warps did progressively less the higher the mode you were in. A red goal would skip 6 stages in Advanced as opposed to 2 in Expert, for instance. It makes sense that this function would be reintroduced, but I'm a little confused as to why it only works selectively. Sometimes green goals behave like red goals in Expert for seemingly no reason. Whether it's through improved conveyance on how exactly these work, or just changing them to behave as is already expected, I hope this pack is able to be updated to accommodate. There's also a couple key stages that are completely skipped when taking the primary warps in Expert. I can understand why Tiers is skipped since that red goal isn't exactly challenge mode friendly, but Freefall? That seems like a strange cut, honestly. Depending on who you ask, Freefall or Launchers are the stages that force the player to learn how to use the minimap. If anything, Freefall should be much earlier if you're planning to place Launchers later in the game. Have this be Advanced 2 or something. Then you could switch it out for Eaten Floor and either cut that stage or swap some others around to make a solid fit for an Expert stage. Even with those decisions in mind though, this is where we begin to see the full extent of what 2-in-1 accomplished within the Expert's difficulty curve. Say what you will about the original Monkey Ball's ruthless quarter-munching format, but it undoubtedly achieved exactly what it was trying to do. SMP2 Expert always felt confused by comparison. It didn't feel solid but ruthless, with spikes intricately placed to maximize the challenge. It just felt haphazard? Master Extra is often pointed to for its lack of a difficulty curve, but 2-in-1 doesn't feel haphazard. Basically everything annoying about the original game has either been removed and replaced, improved to a stunning degree, or made totally optional. I genuinely have no complaints about it, so much so that I doubt I'll find myself going back to SMP2 challenge mode much at all anymore. It's largely thanks to that objective improvement that Spitz accomplished that I have a suggestion for this pack. Give us a modified Deluxe 2 with these stages. Having all of the stages grouped together in a more aligned aesthetic, as well as more enjoyable when played as a challenge mode, could make Ultimate Mode a real treat. I know this would involve either cutting or retexturing the Deluxe exclusives to make them fit, but seeing a project of this sort expanded in this way seems like an interesting opportunity. The Deluxe stages are usually looked at in a similar way to late game SMP2 itself, so they could probably benefit similarly from a second pass. All of this is a suggestion, of course. I just figure that with Monkey Ball Randomizer well underway at this point, that this project wouldn't be asking for too much than that is already offering. Regardless, what's already here shows clearly that a great deal of effort was placed into making them all work in an ideal manner. Well, at least on emulator, that is. Another key aspect I have to mention is console slowdown. I only noticed it on Arthropod and Cylinders, but it's very play affecting there. If you're on emulator, and most likely you are, you can just use an emulated CPU clock override to solve this problem. If you're on original hardware via ROM loader, however, sadly there's no recourse for it. Again, it's just for 2 stages though. So if I haven't made it clear enough already, Monkey Ball 2-in-1 style is amongst my favorites that I've discussed so far. It definitely offers the most to those, like myself, who wish the second game's challenge mode was structured a bit better. But this also has an intrinsic appeal to anyone wanting to revisit the classic Monkey Ball games. Its polish is up there with the very best, even beating Official in some regards. Oh, and it probably has my favorite beginner mode ever, so that's a plus. If you made it this far into a discussion on Monkey Ball Romhacks and somehow haven't checked this one out yet, fix that. You won't regret it. Thank you all so much for watching. 2021 was an extremely tumultuous year for me, and I had to shift many of my plans for it back to this year instead. But I can at least promise that I will have at least a little more output this year than I did last year. Also, for those curious, that Terraria project, as well as others, are also still in the works, but won't come out until this retrospective is completed. Thanks again, and stay tuned for the next one.